this is River, and she has a very beautiful name that I was very struck by. And River, can you tell me a little bit about your name?
So actually, let's go back a little bit. I actually use they, them pronouns as opposed to she, her, meaning that I don't identify as feminine or as a woman. I identify as gender fluid. So a lot of that goes into my yoga teaching. So with that meaning, I chose my name. I chose the name River, and it came from doing a lot of shamanic journeying, and I always start at the river. It's the place where I feel most spiritually connected. And I tend to pull those spiritual connections into all of my classes and everything I do. And it kind of brought me to this path of how can I find balance within myself? And that's where yoga started to come in, to bring that balance and to bring that deeper understanding of myself, to find that balance and to find that harmony and to maybe describe it a little bit better to others. I don't know.
So, are you in a transition now?
Yes and no. So not all trans people do need to transition. However, I am looking to take the active steps to go on testosterone hormone therapy in order to start appearing more masculine, because I typically identify more with a masculine appearance. Not always, but usually that's where I feel most comfortable.
It seems to me like it's a very final change, kind of like death. How does one come to that decision?
So it's actually not totally final. You can actually go on hormone therapy and stop treatment, if you will, in order to just resort back to your natural body. For the most part, everything will resort back to normal after a while of stopping injections. What was the original question? I'm really bad with remembering.
So basically, you're telling me it's an experiment?
It's not an experiment. It's more so, this is what I want to do in order to grow into myself more, or in order to allow my external to meet the internal. So it takes some time to get there, and you can always go back. There is no, this is a definitive, you're on hormones for pretty much the rest of your life. Otherwise, you start getting that more feminine aspect back if you're taking testosterone.
So I have always identified with being a woman and loved being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I can see masculine character traits within myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I do embrace those. So it's still difficult for me to understand. I'm not being judgmental
Of
here.
course.
I'm just trying to understand because, this is something new to me that you could express.
So I have always found masculine aspects within me, and I think that most people have a masculine and a feminine side. I just think that mine shines through in a way that's maybe more apparent and more noticeably coming with body dysmorphia as opposed to just feeling that masculinity. So with body dysmorphia, you don't feel like the body you have matches the body that you should have mentally. So it's a lot of mental, emotional, almost trauma that's wrapped up with that, of feeling like you're in the wrong body and just not feeling good in your own skin in a way that's different from anything else, I could say. So I do think that we all have a masculine and a feminine side. I mean, if you look at the yin and the yang and the moon and the sun, there's all those different types of energy, but it's just to a different degree. Usually with being any form of trans, there's usually at least a little bit of body dysmorphia that comes with it. And I'm not discrediting people that don't have it and identify as trans, but usually that's a big core characteristic to come to that identity.
So you make an interesting point. Was there any initial trauma that set off this dysmorphia?
No, it's always kind of been there. I remember...
Organically?
Yeah, so I remember being young, like middle school young, and realizing once I started growing a chest, oh my god, this feels weird, I don't like this. And then I remember being in middle school and starting to take tape and bind my chest and tie my hair back and wear basketball shorts. And I asked my mom what she would have named me if I was a boy, and when I was alone, I'd dress very masculine and be like, oh, my name's Michael, So it's always kind of been there. But as I got older, I started to understand it a little bit more, because it's not every day, all the time, that I feel masculine because of the gender fluidity. However, I notice that side a lot more of me.
So I notice you do have a very feminine form.
Hmm.
You have a softness, you have very curvy hips. How do you integrate that?
So, some days it's easier than others. Some days I enjoy this body and I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice, I look good. And then other days I'm like, oh my god, how do I hide my curves? So, a lot of the days I'll take a binder on and I'll bind my chest and I'll wear more masculine presenting clothes. It's a little harder to do when I teach. Personally, for me, I find that it's hard to find a style of clothing where my students can see my forms of my legs and my arms, where I'm still not presenting super feminine. And that's okay, and I've come to accept that and embrace that. But it does sometimes pose challenges, and I do my best to integrate and create this shape. You know, you wear a loose shirt and you wear a binder, and usually it looks straight. And that's how it kind of works for me.
So that's the fluidity aspect of
Mhm.
it. And, you know, as I said, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
And stay beautiful.
You too. Stay beautiful. Bye.